A car built by a team that spent 12 years as a national joke, driven by a man who did not get his driving license until he was 24, and a world championship decided by a bolt that nobody remembered to tighten. The BRM P57 has one of the strangest origin stories in Formula One history. These are 12 facts about the car that was never supposed to win. Number 12, BRM started as Britain's answer to Ferrari, and it went horribly wrong. British Racing Motors was founded in 1945 by Raymond Mays, a patriotic racing enthusiast who had run the successful ERA team before the war. His dream was to build an all-British Grand Prix car that could take on the dominant Italian teams. He gathered backing from over 100 British companies, including Rolls-Royce, Standard Motors, and Lucas. The British public treated it like a matter of national pride. The problem was that pride does not win races. Engineering does, and BRM's engineering was about to become the most expensive embarrassment in British motorsport history. Number 11. The car that came before the P57 had 36,000 parts and 600 horsepower, and it still could not win. Before the P57, BRM built the V16, a supercharged 1.5-litre engine with 16 cylinders producing 600 horsepower at 12,000 revolutions per minute. Nothing in Formula One would match that specific output for nearly 30 years. On paper, it was a masterpiece. In practice, the power came on so violently that drivers could barely keep the rear tyres from spinning. Tony Rudd, the engineer who later saved BRM, described the problem simply. They had an engine producing 600 horsepower trying to put its power down through tyres the size of a Formula Ford. Number 10. The V16 managed only a few demonstration laps at its debut, while the King of England watched. The first ever Formula One World Championship race was held at Silverstone in May 1950. King George VI and Princess Margaret were in attendance. Everyone expected to see BRM race. Instead, cracked cylinder heads, overheating and piston failures meant the car could only manage a handful of demonstration laps. It never started the race. 3 months later, at the Daily Express Trophy at the same circuit, a BRM finally made it onto the starting grid. The driveshaft broke before the car moved an inch. The field roared away and the BRM sat motionless on the line. Number 9. Stirling Moss literally wrote a letter saying he refused to drive it. After the Ulster Trophy in June 1952, where both BRM entries failed to finish yet again, Moss wrote directly to Raymond Mays, telling him he would not drive the car in the state it was in. When the best British driver of his generation publicly refuses to get in your car, you know you have a credibility problem. In its entire career under the original V16 formula, BRM scored just one World Championship point. 1 point from a project backed by hundreds of companies and years of work. Number 8. The man who saved BRM was told he had 1 season to deliver, or the team would be shut down. By the late 1950s, BRM had burned through a decade of goodwill. Industrialist Alfred Owen, who had taken over the team in 1952 through his family's company Rubery Owen, reportedly gave the team an ultimatum before the 1962 season: win, or he would pull the plug. Owen's crucial decision was to promote engineer Tony Rudd to full executive authority over the team. Rudd had been with BRM since the V16 days, originally on loan from Rolls-Royce. He was the first professional engineer to have complete technical control, and the reliability problems that had haunted BRM for over a decade began to vanish. Number 7. The P57's engine produced more horsepower than anything else on the 1962 grid. The P57 was fitted with a new V8 engine of BRM's own construction. It produced 190 horsepower from 1,498 cubic centimeters, matching or exceeding everything else on the grid. BRM was also the only British constructor building its own engine. Lotus, Cooper, Brabham and every other British team bought their units from Coventry Climax. Enzo Ferrari reportedly considered BRM the only British team worthy of genuine respect for exactly this reason. Number 6. The P57's driver did not get his driving license until he was 24 years old. Graham Hill was not born into motorsport. He grew up in wartime London during the Blitz, went to technical school and became an apprentice at Smith's Instruments. In 1953, on a whim, he paid for a few laps in a Formula 3 car at Brands Hatch and was immediately hooked. He quit his job, collected unemployment insurance, and talked his way into a mechanic's position at a racing school. He eventually got himself hired by Colin Chapman at Lotus, working as a mechanic for £1 a day, and gradually convinced Chapman to let him drive. Number 5. Hill joining BRM was considered one of the worst career moves in Formula 1. After 2 pointless seasons with Lotus, Hill left for 1960 and joined BRM. The team had a decade of failure behind it, the team that Stirling Moss would not drive for, the team the entire paddock had written off. What nobody expected was that Hill would throw himself into the engineering side, work alongside the mechanics, and drag the team's morale up through sheer determination. He was not the most naturally gifted driver on the grid. He knew it. He made up for it with effort that nobody else was willing to match. By the time the P57 arrived for 1962, BRM was a completely different operation. Quick thing before we get to the top 5 on this list. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, but the algorithm has no reason to show you the next video. If you have made it this far, you clearly care about the cars and the stories behind them. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Number 4. Hill won his first championship race at Zandvoort and then won 3 more that season. Hill took his first World Championship victory at the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, the opening round of the 1962 season. Clark answered with wins in Belgium and Britain, making it clear this would be a season-long fight. Hill came back with victories at the Nürburgring in Germany in wet conditions, at Monza in Italy, where the car finished with less than a pint of fuel remaining, and at the season finale in South Africa. 4 wins from 9 races against the fastest car on the grid. Not bad for a team that 12 months earlier was facing closure. Number 3. The 1962 World Championship was decided by a single missing bolt. Hill's main rival was Jim Clark in the Lotus 25, one of the most important cars in Formula 1 history. Chapman had designed it with a monocoque chassis, a concept every Formula 1 car has used since. The Lotus was faster than the BRM, but it broke constantly. Going into the final race at the Prince George circuit in East London, South Africa, Hill led by 9 points. Clark needed to win to take the title on a tiebreaker. 90,000 spectators turned up. Many had camped overnight. Clark took pole and pulled away at the start while Hill spun his wheels and left the line in a cloud of smoke. By the halfway point, Clark had built a lead of nearly 30 seconds. The championship looked like it was heading to the Lotus camp. Then, on lap 61, blue smoke started pouring from the back of Clark's car. A 2-inch bolt had worked loose from the crankcase because a locking washer had never been fitted during assembly. Oil sprayed across the exhaust. Clark kept going for a few more agonizing laps before pulling into the pits. He was finished. The Lotus mechanics later checked the spare engine and found a clear impression from the locking washer in the alloy crankcase. On Clark's race engine, there was no such impression. The washer had simply never been installed. A component worth almost nothing had decided the World Championship. Number 2. BRM won the Constructors' Championship exactly once in its entire history, and it was this car that did it. Hill crossed the finish line in South Africa to the sound of 90,000 people cheering and honking their car horns. He won the race, he won the Drivers' Championship, and he handed BRM their first Constructors' title. It would also be their last. BRM came second in the constructors' standings 4 more times across the 60s and the 70s, but they never stood on top again. The team soldiered on until 1977 before finally closing its doors. The specific chassis Hill drove that season, number 5781, became known as Old Faithful. It raced on through private teams and accumulated over 20,000 miles of Grand Prix competition, one of the highest mileage cars in the history of the sport. Number 1. Graham Hill went on to achieve something no other driver in history has matched. After winning the championship with BRM, Hill returned to Lotus and won a second World Championship in 1968, after the death of Jim Clark in a racing accident earlier that season. He won the Indianapolis 500 in 1966, and in 1972 he won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That combination makes him the only driver in history to complete the Triple Crown of motorsport. Nobody before or since has won all 3. Hill was killed in 1975 when the plane he was piloting crashed in fog near London. 5 members of his racing team died with him. His son Damon won the Formula One World Championship in 1996, making them the first father and son to both win the title. The BRM P57 is proof that persistence counts for something. 12 years of national humiliation, a team on the verge of being shut down, a driver who started as a mechanic, and one season where it all came together for the only time. If you want to see more untold stories from the golden age of racing, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.